Imagine you are a tree. You stand in a forest, surrounded by ancient pines and whispering birches. Sunlight filters through the canopy and warms your needles. Birds nest in your branches. The wind tells you secrets from distant mountains. Rain kisses your bark. Snow blankets you in silence. It is, by any reasonable measure, paradise. But you cannot see it. You cannot feel it, because you are too busy wishing you were somewhere else. If only I were taller, you think as a sapling. If only I were older. If only I could leave this forest. If only I could be a Christmas tree, standing in a grand house, covered in candles and gold, admired by everyone. Years pass. You grow tall and beautiful. The sparrows say you're the most handsome tree in the forest. You don't hear them. You're too busy waiting. And then, one December morning, men come with axes. Your wish comes true. The axe bites into your trunk, and you feel something you didn't expect. Pain. Real, searing agony. You fall. You're wrapped in cloth, thrown onto a cart, sold to strangers. You're carried into a grand house, decorated with candles and gilded nuts, placed in the center of a beautiful room. This is everything you ever wanted, and you can't enjoy it, because even now, even in the moment of your greatest triumph, you're still waiting, still thinking, what comes next? Something even better must be coming. This can't be all there is. The candles burn, the children dance, the night ends. And the next morning, you're dragged to the attic and thrown in a dark corner, forgotten. You spend months in the darkness, and slowly, horribly, you begin to understand. The forest was the good part. The sunshine and the birds and the wind. That was happiness. That was the destination. And you wished it all away. By the time you realize what you had, it's too late. You're dragged to the yard, chopped into pieces, burned. Each crack of the fire is a sigh. Each spark is a regret. And then there's nothing left but ash. This is The Fir Tree, written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1844. And it might be the most psychologically devastating fairy tale ever written. There's no villain in this story, no curse, no witch or demon. The horror is entirely internal. A mind that cannot be present, cannot appreciate what it has, cannot stop waiting for a future that turns out to be worse than the present it wished away. This isn't a children's story. This is an existential nightmare about the tragedy of living your entire life in the future tense. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you believe the darkest stories from our past deserve to be told, if you want to understand the psychological horror hiding inside fairy tales, you can help us continue this work by liking this video and subscribing. Your support allows us to keep uncovering these dark origins. Tonight, we will follow the fir tree from its first moments of consciousness to its final moments in the fire. We will watch it ignore every warning, waste every gift, and realize the truth only when there's nothing left to save. Then we'll meet Hans Christian Andersen, the tortured man who wrote this tale as a confession of his own psychology. We'll understand why this story was written, what the tree really represents, and why its message is more relevant now than ever. This is not just a fairy tale. This is a horror story about time, about how we waste the only thing we can never get back. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. Our story begins in a forest in Denmark. It's a beautiful forest. ancient oaks, spreading beeches, tall pines that whisper when the wind moves through them. Sunlight dapples the forest floor. Hares dart between the trees. In summer, the air is warm and sweet with the smell of resin and wildflowers. And in this forest, there grows a little fir tree. It's a handsome tree, even when young. Its needles are fresh and green. Its form is perfect, symmetrical, healthy, exactly the kind of tree that catches the eye. It has everything a young tree could want: good soil, enough water, plenty of sunlight filtering through the older trees. But the fir tree is not happy. From its very first moments of consciousness, the fir tree is consumed by a single, burning obsession. It wants to be bigger. It hates being small. It hates that the older trees tower above it, blocking some of the light. It hates that the hares can jump over it, that the children who sometimes walk through the forest can step across it without noticing. Oh, if only I were as tall as the other trees, the fir tree sighs constantly. Then I could spread out my branches and look out at the wide world. The birds would nest in my branches. The wind would tell me its secrets. I would be someone important. It cannot enjoy the sunshine because it's too busy resenting its size. It cannot appreciate the rain because it's too focused on growing faster. Every moment of its existence is spent longing for a future state instead of experiencing the present one. This is the first tragedy of the fir tree, and it happens before anything external occurs. The tree is already cursed, not by magic, but by its own psychology. It has been given paradise, and it cannot see it. Nature itself tries to teach the fir tree. Andersen personifies the elements, gives them voices, lets them speak directly to the young tree, and every single one of them tells it the same thing. The sunbeams say, "Rejoice in your youth, rejoice in your fresh growth, in the young life that is in you." The wind sings through its branches, telling it to be glad. The morning dew weeps with joy on its needles, trying to show it the beauty of each moment. The tree hears none of it, or rather, it hears all of it and dismisses it. What do sunbeams know? What does the wind understand about ambition? The tree has plans. The tree has goals. The tree cannot waste time appreciating things when there's so much growing still to do. Years pass. The tree grows. Each year, a new ring forms inside its trunk. Each autumn, the children come to the forest to gather berries and nuts, and they say, "Oh, what a pretty little tree." They mean it as a compliment. The tree is insulted. "Little," it thinks bitterly. "I don't want to be pretty. I don't want to be little. I want to be the biggest tree in the forest." It's worth pausing here to notice something crucial. The tree is already receiving praise, already admired, already valued, but it cannot accept any of it because it doesn't match the fantasy it has constructed. The appreciation comes in the wrong form, so it's rejected entirely. This is a pattern that will repeat throughout the story. The tree will be given exactly what it asks for, and it will still be unhappy because the problem was never the external circumstances. The problem is the tree's relationship to its own experience. As the tree grows, sparrows begin to nest in its branches. They're travelers. They've seen the world beyond the forest, and they love to tell stories. They speak of cities with tall buildings, of ships with masts made from trees, of the sea which stretches farther than any forest, of mountains capped with snow. of places the fir tree can barely imagine. The tree drinks in these stories, not with joy, with envy. Every tale of the outside world is another reminder that the tree is stuck here, in this forest, unable to move, unable to explore, unable to experience any of the wonders being described. "Oh, if only I could fly like you," the tree sighs. "If only I could see these things." It never occurs to the tree that the sparrows chose to nest in it, that they find value in the tree's branches, that maybe, just maybe, being a home for travelers who bring you stories from around the world is itself a kind of participation in that wider world. The tree can only see what it lacks, never what it has. And then come the storks. Storks are different from sparrows. They're larger, more dignified, and they've seen things the sparrows haven't. One autumn, as they prepare for their migration south, they rest in the forest and speak of wonders. "You want to know where trees go when they leave the forest?" a stork asks the fir tree. "Some become masts on ships, but the luckiest ones, the most beautiful ones, they have a far greater destiny." The fir tree trembles with anticipation. What? What happens to them? "In December," the stork says, "the most perfect young trees are cut down and brought into human houses. They're placed in warm rooms. They're decorated with golden apples and gilded nuts. Candles are placed on their branches, dozens of candles, all lit at once. Toys and sweets hang from every bough. Children dance around them. Everyone admires them. They become the center of everything." The fir tree can barely breathe. This is what it was born for. This is the destiny it has been waiting for its entire life. "And then what?" the tree asks. "What happens after the candles and the dancing? What comes next?" The stork pauses. "We don't know. We've never seen what comes after." But the fir tree doesn't care about after. It's already lost in the fantasy of Christmas night. From this moment on, every other thought vanishes from its mind. The sunshine means nothing. The birds mean nothing. The wind and the rain and the changing seasons, all of it is just waiting now. Just time to be endured until December. "Oh, I wish it were Christmas already," the tree sighs. "I wish the men would come with axes. I wish I were on a cart going toward my glorious future." The other trees, the old pines who have seen things, who understand the forest's wisdom, try to warn it. "Enjoy your youth," they say. "Enjoy the fresh air and the freedom. Once you leave this forest, you can never return. Once you're cut down, you're no longer alive in the same way. Appreciate what you have while you have it." But the fir tree cannot hear wisdom. It can only hear the siren song of its own fantasy. "They're just jealous," it thinks. "They're old and ugly, and no one will ever choose them for Christmas. They want to keep me here because they can't bear to see me succeed." And so the fir tree waits, season after season, year after year, growing taller and more beautiful, but completely unable to experience any of it. Its entire existence becomes a holding pattern for an imagined future. It is, in a very real sense, already dead. Not physically. Physically it's thriving, but its capacity for lived experience, for presence, for actual life, that died the moment it started waiting for something better. Time passes. The fir tree grows into exactly what the storks described. A perfect specimen. Tall, symmetrical, its needles thick and fragrant. It's precisely the kind of tree that catches the eye of the men who come each December. But for years the tree is passed over. The men come with their axes, look around, and choose other trees, smaller trees, different trees. The fir tree watches its neighbors fall, one by one, carried away to their glorious destinies, while it remains rooted in place. Why not me? It rages silently. I'm the most beautiful tree here. I'm exactly what they should want. Other trees are cut for other purposes. Some become lumber for houses. Some become masts for ships. The fir tree envies even these. At least they're going somewhere, doing something. At least they're escaping this prison of roots and soil. When the swallows and storks pass by, the tree begs for information. Where do the mast trees go? What's it like to sail the ocean? The creatures describe the endless sea, the salt wind, the distant lands. The tree trembles with longing. Anywhere but here. Anything but this. Rejoice in your youth, the sunshine says again. Rejoice in your growth, in the fresh air, in the life that is in you. But the tree cannot rejoice. It can only wait. And then, finally, it happens. December comes. The men come. They walk through the forest, examining trees, and one of them points directly at the fir tree. This one, he says, it's perfect. The fir tree's heart, or whatever passes for a heart in a tree, sings with triumph. Finally, the moment it has waited its entire life for, the destiny it knew was coming, the validation of every moment of dissatisfaction and longing. The man raises his axe, and then comes the first stroke. Andersen doesn't sanitize this moment. He describes it clearly. The tree feels a sharp, deep stroke that penetrates its core. Pain, real, physical agony, something the tree never anticipated. In all its fantasies about leaving the forest, it never once imagined that departure would hurt. The axe falls again, and again. The tree groans. It feels itself weakening, tilting, falling. And as it crashes to the forest floor, something else happens. Something the tree didn't expect at all. It feels grief. Lying on the ground, severed from its roots, the tree suddenly realizes what it has lost. The connection to the earth, the flow of water through its trunk, the feeling of being alive in the most fundamental sense. It looks up at the sky through the canopy, the same sky it has looked at every day for years without really seeing, and it thinks, I will never see this again. For one moment, just one, the tree understands. It feels regret. It recognizes that the forest was beautiful, that the sunshine was precious, that it has just lost something it can never recover. But the moment passes. The men are wrapping it in cloth, loading it onto a cart. The tree forces itself to focus on the future again, on Christmas, on the glory that awaits. This is just the transition, it tells itself. The pain is temporary, the reward is coming. And so it pushes down the grief, buries the regret, and returns to waiting. The tree is transported through the cold December air. It can't see where it's going, it's wrapped too tightly. It can only feel the jostling of the cart, hear the voices of the men, sense the passage of time. It arrives at a marketplace. It stood upright alongside other trees, other perfect specimens, all competing for the same destiny. People walk by, examining them, judging them. Two children appear with a servant. They look at the fir tree and cry, "This one! We want this one!" The tree feels a surge of pride. Chosen again, validated again. It doesn't question where it's going or what will happen when it gets there. It only knows that it's been selected, that it's special, that its patience is being rewarded. It's carried to a grand house, carried inside, into warmth, into light, into a beautiful room it can barely comprehend. Everything the stalks described is about to come true. The tree is placed in a great tub filled with sand, draped with green cloth, so no one can see how it's supported. It stands in the center of a beautiful room, just as the stalks promised. And then the decoration begins. Servants climb ladders and hang gilded apples and walnuts on its branches. They drape strings of sweets and colored paper from bough to bough. They attach small net bags filled with treasures. They place candles, dozens of candles, on every available branch. At the very top, they place a golden star. The tree looks down at itself in wonder. It's exactly as beautiful as it always imagined, more beautiful even. Every fantasy it ever had is coming true. This should be the peak, the culmination, the moment of perfect satisfaction. But something strange is happening inside the tree. Instead of joy, it feels anxiety. When will the candles be lit, it wonders. When will the celebration begin? What happens next? There must be something even more wonderful coming. The tree cannot enjoy the decoration because it's already waiting for the next thing. It has finally arrived at the destination it longed for, and its first instinct is to look past it, to assume this is just another waiting room for something better. Oh, that the evening were here, it thinks. Oh, that the candles were already lit. What will happen then? I wonder if the other trees from the forest will come to see me. I wonder if the sparrows will fly to the window and look in. It's still comparing, still competing, still unable to simply be where it is. Evening comes. The candles are lit. The room blazes with light, and the tree is at the center of it all, a tower of flame and gold and sweetness. The doors open. Children rush in, screaming with delight. They circle the tree, reaching for the sweets, pulling at the toys. Adults follow, smiling, watching, participating in the joy. The tree is terrified. It doesn't understand what's happening. The children are grabbing at its branches, stripping away the decorations. Is this right? Is this supposed to happen? It wants to tell them to stop, to be careful, to treat it with the reverence it deserves, but it can't speak. It can only stand there, burning with candles, watching its treasures disappear into the hands of children who see it as nothing more than a delivery system for sweets. What's happening? The tree wonders frantically. What comes next? There must be more. This can't be all there is. An old man sits in the corner. When the frenzy dies down, when the children have taken what they want and settled onto the floor, he begins to tell a story. It's the story of Humpty Dumpty, or, in some versions, Klumper Dumper, a figure that fell from a great height, broke apart, but somehow still won the princess in the end, still achieved the happy ending despite the fall. The tree latches onto this story with desperate hope. Maybe this is a sign. Maybe the tree will also fall. It already has fallen, in a sense, cut from the forest, but still achieve glory. Still win the princess, whatever that means for a tree. Perhaps tomorrow I'll be decorated again, the tree thinks. Perhaps tomorrow will be even better. Perhaps this is just the beginning. The children dance and play. The adults laugh and drink. The candles burn lower. and the tree stands in the middle of all of it, present in body but absent in mind, still waiting, still hoping, still unable to simply experience the moment. The candles gutter and die. The children are carried to bed. The adults drift away. The servants close the doors, and the tree is left alone. It stands in the dark room, decorated but disheveled, glorious but stripped of half its treasures. The star still glimmers at its top, catching the faint light from the embers of the dying fire. Tomorrow, the tree tells itself. Tomorrow they'll come back. Tomorrow they'll light the candles again. Tomorrow will be even better. It doesn't realize that there will be no tomorrow, not like this. Christmas happens once, the candles burn once, the children dance once, and then it's over. The tree spends the whole night waiting, quivering with anticipation, planning for a future that has already passed it by. Morning comes. Servants enter. The tree braces itself for decoration, for celebration, for the continuation of its glory. They drag it to the attic. The servants grab the tree roughly, not with the reverence of decoration, but with the efficiency of disposal. They carry it through the house, up narrow stairs, into a dark attic. They throw it in a corner, and they leave. The tree lies in the darkness, utterly confused. This can't be right. There must be some mistake. Maybe this is temporary. Maybe they're storing it here until the next celebration. Maybe this is just a pause before more glory. They must be preserving me for something wonderful, it tells itself. They must have plans. No one would decorate a tree so beautifully just to throw it away. Days pass. No one comes. The tree begins to dry out in the stuffy attic air. Its needles, once fresh and green, start to brown at the tips. Its branches droop. Still, the tree waits. Still, it believes. Weeks pass. The tree hears distant sounds from the house below. Laughter, music, life continuing without it. No one thinks about the tree in the attic. No one remembers it's there. The tree is completely, utterly alone. And then, in the darkness, the tree hears a small scratching sound. Mice. A family of them, living in the attic walls. They've noticed the tree, noticed the few remaining decorations, the lingering smell of sweets. "Where do you come from?" a little mouse asks. "What's it like outside this attic?" And for the first time in its existence, the tree becomes a storyteller. It tells the mice about the forest, about the sunshine and the rain, about the sparrows who nested in its branches and told tales of distant lands, about the wind whispering through the pines, about the hares jumping over it when it was small. As it speaks, something strange happens. The tree begins to feel the weight of its own words. It's describing the forest not as a prison, not as a waiting room, but as home, as somewhere beautiful, as somewhere it was happy. "Those were good times," the tree says slowly, as if realizing it for the first time. "I didn't know it then. I didn't understand. But those were the good times." The mice listen with rapt attention. To them, the forest sounds like paradise. They've never seen a tree growing in the ground. They've never felt sunlight or rain. The tree's past is their fantasy of the future. "Tell us about Christmas," they beg. Tell us about the candles and the dancing." The tree describes Christmas night, and as it does, it realizes something else. That night, too, was beautiful. The candles were beautiful. The children's joy was beautiful. It was exactly what the tree had wished for, and the tree couldn't experience it. Even while it was happening, the tree was waiting for something else. "I was happy," the tree whispers in the darkness. "I was happy, and I didn't know it." This is the moment of horrible clarity, the anagnorisis, if we're using literary terms, the moment when the tragic hero finally understands the truth that will destroy them. The tree realizes that happiness was available to it at every moment of its existence. In the forest, in the sunshine, in the company of birds and wind. On Christmas night, surrounded by light and joy and celebration, happiness was there, offered freely, and the tree refused it every single time, because it was always waiting for something better, something more, something next. And now, it's in an attic, dried and dying, and there is no next. There's only the slow decay of something that never learned to be alive. The tree clings to one last hope, the story of Humpty Dumpty, the figure that fell and still won the princess. Maybe the tree's story will end the same way. Maybe even now, in this dark attic, salvation is coming. Perhaps I too will fall and win the princess, it thinks. Perhaps this is just another waiting room. Perhaps glory is still ahead. But the mice grow bored of its stories. They stop visiting. They find other sources of food, other entertainment. The tree is left alone again, clinging to a fairy tale hope in a dusty corner. Months pass. The tree continues to dry. Its needles fall off in tiny showers. Its sap hardens. Something that was once alive is slowly becoming kindling. Spring comes. The servants remember the tree in the attic, not with affection, but with the practical awareness that it needs to be removed. They climb the stairs, grab the dried husk of what was once the most beautiful tree in the forest, and drag it outside. For the first time in months, the tree sees sunlight. It's a beautiful spring day. The garden is blooming. Roses are opening their first buds. Birds are singing. Children are playing on the lawn. The same children who danced around the tree at Christmas, though they seem to have grown, changed, moved on. The tree looks at all of this, the sunshine, the fresh air, the green growing things, and it feels a surge of desperate longing. If only I could stay here, it thinks. If only I could stand in this garden and feel the sun again. I would appreciate it now. I would be present. I wouldn't wish for anything else. But it's too late. The tree is dead. It's been dead for months, just a dried shell of what it once was. It can observe the garden, but it can never be part of it again. It looks down at its own branches, withered, brown, bare. It remembers how it looked at Christmas, covered in decorations. It remembers how it looked in the forest, green and vibrant and alive. All over, the tree thinks. All over, and I never truly lived. The children play in the yard, running past the tree without a glance. One of them is wearing something gold on his jacket, a medal or pin of some kind. The tree looks closer and realizes it's the golden star, the star that once sat at the tree's very top, the crown of its glory. The child doesn't know where it came from, doesn't remember the tree. It's just another piece of decoration, repurposed and forgotten. The tree watches the child run past. Its star, the symbol of its greatest triumph, means nothing now. It's an ornament on a boy who doesn't even remember the tree exists. This is what becomes of glory. This is what becomes of being the center of attention, of being decorated and admired. A few months pass and no one remembers. The tree is as if it never existed. The servants take an axe and chop the tree into pieces. Each blow sends shudders through the dry wood. The tree feels it, not as pain exactly, since there's no life left to feel pain, but as a kind of memory of pain, an echo of the first axe, the one that severed it from the forest. The pieces are carried to a fire pit. Kindling is arranged. A match is struck. The tree burns. Andersen describes this moment with devastating precision. Each crack of the fire is a sigh, a final exhalation of regret. Each spark that rises is a memory escaping, lost forever. The tree thinks of the forest, of the summer days, the winter nights, the birds and the wind and the rain. It thinks of Christmas Eve, the candles, the children's faces. It thinks of the sunshine that said, "Rejoice," and the old pines that said, "Appreciate what you have." All of it burns. All of it rises in smoke and ash and is gone. The children play in the garden. The youngest one still wears the golden star on his jacket. He runs and laughs and doesn't think about the tree at all. And with each pop, each crackle, the tree sighs out its regrets. For the forest it couldn't appreciate, for the Christmas it couldn't enjoy, for the life it spent entirely in waiting for a moment that never came. The fire dies down. The tree is ash now, grey flakes stirring in the spring breeze. Andersen ends the story simply, and the tree was burned, quite consumed, and the boys played in the garden, and the youngest had the golden star on his breast. There is no redemption. No angel appears. No heavenly voice offers forgiveness or meaning. The tree simply ends, having never once been present in its own existence. It spent its youth waiting for adulthood. Its adulthood waiting for Christmas. Its Christmas waiting for something more. Its decay waiting for rescue. And now it's ash, and the waiting is over, and it never actually lived at all. The story ends. The children play. The garden blooms. Life continues, indifferent to the tree that wasted its entire existence waiting for it to begin. Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Fir Tree in 1844, just 1 year before he would write The Red Shoes. These two stories come from the same period of his life, the same psychological state. They're companion pieces, really. One about external punishment for desire, the other about internal punishment for dissatisfaction. But where The Red Shoes features angels and curses and obvious moral judgment, The Fir Tree is quieter, subtler, and in many ways more devastating, because there's no villain in The Fir Tree, no curse, no external force imposing suffering. The tree destroys itself. Its own psychology is the prison. And this was Andersen's confession. Because he knew, he understood with painful clarity, that he was the tree. By 1844, Hans Christian Andersen was one of the most famous writers in Europe. His fairy tales had been translated into multiple languages. He was invited to royal courts. He dined with aristocrats. He had achieved everything the poor shoemaker's son from Odense ever dreamed of achieving. and he was miserable. His diaries from this period reveal a man in constant psychological torment. Not because of external hardship, his life was objectively successful, but because he couldn't stop comparing himself to others, couldn't stop waiting for the next achievement, couldn't stop believing that happiness was just around the corner if he could only accomplish one more thing. When he was poor and unknown, he dreamed of being published. When he was published, he dreamed of being famous. When he was famous, he dreamed of being loved. When he was loved by readers across Europe, he dreamed of being loved romantically. The goalposts kept moving. The dissatisfaction remained constant. Andersen spent his entire adult life in the drawing rooms of the wealthy. He was celebrated, praised, treated as a treasure, but he never felt like he belonged. "I feel like a fraud," he wrote in his diary. "They see the famous author, but I still see the boy from the slums. Any moment they'll realize I don't belong here." This is the fir tree's psychology exactly. The tree stands in the beautiful room, decorated with gold and candles, admired by everyone, and it can't enjoy any of it because it's too busy waiting for the real celebration to begin. It has imposter syndrome. It can't accept its own success. Andersen fell in love repeatedly throughout his life, with women who didn't love him back, possibly with men he couldn't acknowledge loving. Each romantic failure confirmed his deepest fear, that he was fundamentally unlovable, that his success was hollow, that the real life he wanted was always just out of reach. He was a man standing in the sun, convinced he was in shadow. The Fir Tree is Andersen looking at himself with terrible clarity. He knew what he was doing. He knew he was wasting his life in anticipation instead of experience. He wrote the story as a warning, to himself as much as to anyone else. And then he kept doing it anyway. That's the tragedy within the tragedy. Andersen understood his own psychology well enough to write this devastating diagnosis. And he still couldn't change. He still spent the rest of his life chasing approval, waiting for love, unable to be present in the success he'd already achieved. He was the tree. He wrote the story, and he burned anyway. Andersen wasn't writing in a vacuum. The 19th century had specific ideas about time, ambition, and the proper use of a life. The Protestant work ethic was in full flower. Contentment was seen as laziness. Rest was suspicious. A good person was always striving, always improving, always reaching for the next goal. The idea of simply enjoying what you had, of being satisfied, was practically a moral failing. But there was a counter-message too, especially in religious circles. Earthly desires lead to emptiness. Material success doesn't satisfy the soul. The things of this world are temporary. Only spiritual things endure. These two messages seem contradictory. Always strive for more, but also don't value what you strive for. But they were both present in Victorian culture. The result was a kind of psychological double bind. You must achieve, but you must not enjoy your achievements. The Fir Tree embodies this contradiction perfectly. It strives constantly, reaches constantly, achieves constantly, and is never satisfied. Its ambition is presented as a flaw, but so is any alternative. The old pines who say, "Appreciate what you have," are portrayed as wise, but they're also stuck in the forest, going nowhere. The story offers no model for how to actually live well. Because Andersen didn't have one, he was trapped in the same double bind as his culture, driven to succeed, unable to enjoy success, guilty about both the striving and the dissatisfaction. Let's look at what each element of this story represents, because the symbolism is as precise as it is devastating. The tree itself. The Fir Tree represents human consciousness, specifically the driven, achieving, never satisfied modern self. It's aware enough to have desires, but not wise enough to appreciate what it has. It can imagine futures, but it can't experience presence. It's the part of us that's always somewhere else. The forest. The forest is childhood, innocence, the capacity for presence that we lose as we mature. It's also simply where we are now. Whatever situation we're in that we fail to appreciate because we're too busy wanting to be somewhere else. The forest is the life we're given before we decide it's not enough. Christmas night. This represents the achievement of goals. Every milestone, every success, every dream that comes true. And the tree's inability to enjoy Christmas is Andersen's devastating observation that achieving goals doesn't automatically produce satisfaction. You can get exactly what you wished for and still be miserable if your mind isn't capable of being present. The attic. The attic is the long middle of life, the period after achievement and before death, when we finally have time to reflect on what we did and didn't do. It's where epiphanies come too late to be useful. It's the space of regret without remedy. The burning. The fire is death and the realization in the final moments that there is no later where happiness was waiting. The fire consumes everything the tree was and everything it might have been and leaves only ash. It's the ultimate deadline, the final proof that waiting was a waste.
The Fir Tree was written in 1844. It's more relevant now than ever. Consider how we live today. We carry devices in our pockets that show us, constantly, lives that seem better than ours. We scroll through curated images of vacations we're not taking, achievements we haven't accomplished, relationships that seem happier than our own. We're surrounded by evidence that somewhere else, something better is happening. And we're always waiting. Waiting for the weekend, waiting for vacation, waiting for the promotion, the relationship, the house, the achievement that will finally make us feel like life has begun. We treat our present circumstances as a waiting room for real life, just as the tree treated the forest as a waiting room for Christmas. We photograph experiences instead of having them. We optimize instead of living. We compare instead of appreciating. We've built an entire culture around the fir tree's psychology, around the belief that happiness is somewhere else, something else, some other time. And then we wonder why, when we finally achieve the things we were waiting for, they don't feel the way we imagined. The hedonic treadmill, psychologists call it. The phenomenon where achieving goals immediately creates new goals, where each achievement becomes the new baseline rather than a source of lasting satisfaction. We're all on the treadmill, running toward a horizon that keeps receding. Andersen saw this. In 1844, before smartphones, before social media, before the modern attention economy, he understood exactly how this psychology works and where it leads. To ash. Always to ash. Here's what makes the fir tree more devastating than the red shoes or the Little Mermaid or any of Andersen's other tragic tales. There's no one to blame. In the red shoes, Karen is cursed by an angel. There's an external force imposing the suffering. In The Little Mermaid, there are sea witches and conditions and bargains. There's a structure of cause and effect that makes the tragedy feel almost logical. But in the fir tree, there's no curse, no villain, no mistake that could have been avoided. The tree's destruction is entirely self-inflicted, and it comes not from a single bad decision, but from a fundamental flaw in how the tree relates to its own experience. The tree can't enjoy the forest because it's waiting for Christmas. It can't enjoy Christmas because it's waiting for something more. It can't even enjoy the mice's company in the attic because it's still hoping for rescue. At no point in the story is the tree capable of being where it is. This isn't a choice it makes consciously. It's the structure of its consciousness. The tree is constitutionally incapable of presence. And that's the horror. That's what makes this story keep you awake at night. Because maybe we're the same. Maybe our inability to enjoy what we have isn't a choice we're making wrong. Maybe it's wired into us, the way it seems to be wired into the tree. Maybe we'll spend our whole lives in the future tense and only understand what we had when we're burning. Andersen offers no solution, no redemption arc, no moment where the tree learns its lesson and is saved. Just the fire, just the slow destruction of a consciousness that could never be satisfied with what it was given. We've followed the fir tree from forest to fire. We've watched it ignore the sunshine and the wind and the birds. We've watched it achieve its dream of Christmas and be unable to enjoy it. We've watched it languish in the attic, finally understanding what it lost, and then burn without redemption or rescue. And we've understood why Andersen wrote this story, because he was the tree, because he spent his whole life achieving and striving and still feeling empty, because he knew exactly what he was doing wrong and couldn't stop doing it. The fir tree isn't a warning about a mistake we might make. It's a diagnosis of a mistake most of us are already making. Right now, somewhere, you're in your forest, you're standing in sunshine, whatever form that takes in your life. There are birds in your branches, wind in your needles, people who appreciate you exactly as you are. And you're probably wishing you were somewhere else, wishing you were more successful, more attractive, more accomplished, wishing you had the relationship, the job, the house, the life that you imagine would finally make you happy, waiting for real life to begin. But here's the thing. There is no real life waiting in the future. There's only this moment, and then this one, and then this one. And if you're not present for these moments, if you're always somewhere else in your mind, then you'll look back from your attic and realize the same thing the tree realized. You were happy, and you didn't know it. The tree thought the forest was a waiting room. It thought Christmas would be the real thing. It thought the attic was temporary. It was wrong every time. What if where you are right now is not a waiting room? What if this is the destination? What if the sunshine and the wind and the people around you, what if that's the good part? The part you'll desperately miss when it's gone. Andersen wrote this story as a confession. He knew he was the tree. He knew he was wasting his life in anticipation instead of experience. He wrote it down, published it, and then kept living exactly the same way. We don't have to make the same choice. We can read this story and actually learn from it. We can look at the tree burning in the fire, hear its sighs of regret, and decide, not us. We can choose to be present, choose to appreciate, choose to stop waiting and start living. It's not easy. Our whole culture pushes us toward the tree's psychology. Social media, advertising, the economy itself, all of it is designed to make us feel that we're not enough, that we need more, that satisfaction is just one purchase or achievement or experience away. But awareness is the first step. Seeing the pattern is the first step. And now you've seen it in the most devastating form Andersen could devise. A tree that could never be where it was, that wasted its entire existence in the future tense, that burned with sighs of regret for everything it never appreciated. Somewhere right now, A fir tree stands in a forest, sun on its needles, birds in its branches, wind whispering through. It's perfect. It's enough. It's everything. And it's wishing it were a Christmas tree. The question is, are you? If you found this exploration valuable, if you believe these dark stories deserve to be understood and analyzed, please like this video and subscribe to the Midnight Archives. These tales shaped our culture and our psychology. We need to understand where they came from and what they really mean. In the comments, tell me, what's your forest? What are you failing to appreciate while waiting for something better? And do you think you can stop? Share this with anyone who needs to hear it. We're all trees, standing in our own forests, wishing we were somewhere else. Maybe if enough of us recognize it, we can start to change. Thank you for bearing witness to this quiet nightmare. Thank you for sitting with the discomfort of seeing yourself in the tree. The fire is coming for all of us. It's called time, and it burns everything eventually. The only question is whether we'll be present for the burning or still waiting for real life to begin. The fir tree is ash now. Its story is told. But yours isn't over yet. You still have forests to appreciate, sunshine to feel, birds to hear. If you're listening to this, you're still alive. You're still in the forest. Don't waste it.